is that every single case you have, there's some new factual issue, there's some perhaps new legal issue, and there's a technical issue associated with most of the stuff that you're doing in environmental things. And I'm not sure what kind of plaintiff's law you're practicing, but each of those cases is going to give you some experience in that regard. So at Farella, and Farella is not that much different from most of the other sort of larger law firms. The summer programs are very restricted right now in terms of hiring 1Ls and 2Ls. I don't understand the rules. There's apparently very set rules in terms of when people can go on campus and interview, and there's a set time period, and sometimes that time period starts even before law students are back into class. And it's the same thing that's true with judicial clerkships. There's rules associated with that too. The judges can break those rules, but the law firms really can't. So, with respect to a school like Golden Gate and Santa Clara and USF and some of the not lower tier schools, but the schools that are not the Yales, the Harvards, the Bolts, the Stanfords, I actually prefer to work with people sometimes who are not from those schools because I just find them to be more adventurous. They have different life experiences, which is, I think, a huge skill that law school doesn't always teach you, and some law schools don't always teach you. So a lot of it is just getting the experience, and as has been talked about, meeting the right people, volunteering for different organizations, serving on boards, developing contacts through both traditional ways and through all the social networking that's now sort of out there and available. Tools that we hadn't even thought about before, and you learn some new application for them every single day. So it's kind of just getting out there, getting yourself out there, and as people have talked about, and folks have talked about, finding those different causes that you're interested in and those different organizations that you're interested in.
I have a follow-up comment to what Bud said, and it kind of segues to my comment question. When I was between my second and third year of law school, I was a summer associate with what was then Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund in San Francisco. It's now called Earth Justice, and I, at that point, would have been very, very interested in trying to segue that summer associate position into a staff attorney position. What their practice was then, and I believe it's still the practice is now, is they said, hey, we have a specialized 2-year fellowship for people coming out of law school, but we don't hire people out of law school. We do not hire people out of law school as staff attorneys. And the reason that was explained to me then, and I've heard this from several other people, is that we don't have the resources to do the type of training, and frankly hand-holding was the term I was used, that's needed. We need someone who can take a case from intake to analysis to full briefing through trial pretty much by themselves with a little bit of input, because that's the way we're staffed up. So what they basically said is you need to go, if you want to be a staff attorney at Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, you need to find a way, and there, I think Brett suggested this, but you need to find a way to get that experience. One way is not to work for an organization and simply do your own thing. But what was interesting is that there were a lot of people there who were staff attorneys who had worked and been trained in firms. There were a lot of people that had worked for district attorneys, county attorneys, California AGs, Justice Department, and moved laterally. So this sort of goes to my question that I'll put to all of you, is, you're getting a sense now of this sort of, the environmental bar, quite apart from practice areas, sort of has a public interest aspect of the bar, public sector, a private interest sector, private bar. I would be interested to hear your experience of the relationship between the public sector, the public interest sector, and the private sector environmental bar, particularly with an eye towards where our students or recent grads are in terms of getting experience. And I'll answer my own question first because, like I said, I've worn these different hats, and my feeling is that because I've worked, even in my firm, 30% of our clients are nonprofits, and about 20% are public agencies. So I work for a firm, but even half of my practice has been working for a firm representing public agencies and nonprofits. But the fact that I've worked for private sector clients, even clients that are involved in development of real estate transactions, I think makes me better at representing public interest clients and public interest litigation. I'm better at tearing apart a CEQA document and an EIR and finding that one weakness that I can cripple it, because I've worked doing the compliance side on it. And I just would like to hear your thoughts about, what either your experiences are in terms of the different types of experience you can have working towards your dream job. Why don't I go in reverse order from how we went? I'll start with Layla, and if you have some thoughts, we'll go backwards.
Sure. Well, I had precisely the same experience when I was looking for jobs. Everyone I spoke to said the same thing. You have to work for a private firm, so they'll train you, and you'll get that experience, and then you can go into the public sector, unless you happen to get a fellowship and it translates into a job. And I just refused to do that. And I actually think it was to my detriment, because it is true that you gain a lot of experience working in the big firm setting, but since I don't litigate, it doesn't hinder my work too much. But I think there's a lot to be said for getting that firm experience first, and as long as you can just cultivate the pro bono work on the side and demonstrate your commitment to the environment in other ways, that's going to be, turn it off. Too much sound. Oh well. As long as you can demonstrate your commitment to the environment in other ways, then I think it'll work out.
I guess I understood your question to be in part, how do the various attorneys in these different sectors work together, and also about the skill sets, how they translate. I would say if you take the question the first way, I would say, in the public agency realm, I think you'll see that depending on whatever the project is, you may have environmental groups on the other side of the table from you, or industry or other groups on the other side, depending on what the particular project is. So, so the relationship can go, hot or cold, I suppose. And then I think in terms of how nonprofits and private firms, sort of defense firms tend to interact, I think it varies a little bit by region of the country. I did a little bit of work in the Midwest for a while, and there I found a lot of the larger firms do a lot of pro bono work for environmental causes, especially in Minnesota around the boundary waters and conservation. That's almost unheard of in California. I mean, it's very, very rare to have any of the larger sort of defense firms take up pro bono cases for environmental causes. It's usually, the pro bono practice usually focuses elsewhere, legal services, things like this. So I'd say there's not as much of a relationship there in general, in my experience anyways. In terms of the skill sets, I think the most important thing really is trying to just figure out what you really want, and then the skill sets can be learned in the same way you can try and pick up chemistry on the job. Lawyering isn't rocket science. You may have to litigate over rocket science in this field at some level, but the lawyering itself is something that you can pick up, and if you do build a network, find some other people who are working on similar causes to you, you can rely on each other to help you get through some of the tougher elements of the cases. So I think, like Layla, I would tend to agree that these sort of arbitrary limitations on the jobs you're available to, you can break through them if you want.
Well, I think with the variety of different jobs that you can get, it gives you perspective, and I think that's what I see a lot in the environmental bar, is that people bring their experiences, and many have a shared perspective that helps with client work, and it helps with resolution of cases, be it a litigation matter or a policy issue, or something in between. When Paul was talking, I was thinking about a partner of mine who was a partner at Dinkelspiel, and he had an opportunity to go to Hawaii and run Skolniff's Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund office in Hawaii, and so he went from a partnership, a law partnership, to running that office for 5 or 6 years, and provides him now with a very unique perspective in terms of dealing with on lands issues, for example, with a lot of the citizen group and public interest groups, because he's represented some of them, or he was the lawyer for some published cases that are sort of seminal cases. And I think that's true with people in our firm too who have Department of Justice background or EPA background or state regulatory background or any one of a host of things. It just gives you perspective, and I think that's the most important thing that you can really have because it benefits you as a lawyer, and I think it really helps to achieve some common ground or to argue your position a little bit better if you know what the other side's thinking. To your point about winning. So I think that's just it's a good opportunity to be able to experience all those different perspectives with the different organizations that you might be involved with.
I don't know if I have much to add. I've worked in the public sector. I worked for the Coastal Commission and now PCDC, and I worked for NGOs, and I've done academic work. I teach at Vermont Law School, and I've taught in other schools as well. And my only experience with private practice has been when I first started out, I was so sick of the law that having just studied for the bar exam, that I became a carpenter in Santa Barbara. And I just decided I wanted to learn a real craft, something that could be useful. So I worked on building houses, and one by one, the people that I was working with found out that I was a lawyer, and they asked me to represent them in their drunk driving cases or their divorces or their things like that. And so slowly I was getting sucked out and sucked into this private practice. And finally, the last straw was when I was doing a divorce for a guy that I was working with, and he and his wife were fighting over the community property, which happened to be a stash of cocaine. So this isn't why I went to law school. I said, this is not community property. You don't want to bring this up in the court. And so I found out that there was a grant program that I could utilize. I don't think it exists anymore. The Comprehensive Training Employment Act paid me to work for the Environmental Defense Center in Santa Barbara. So that was part of it. It's like a public interest law firm that they have there, and it still exists, I believe. So I started working for them, and through that, I was representing community organizations for the Coastal Commission, and that morphed into a job with the Coastal Commission. That's how I got into this field. So I would say to get the expertise that you need to get a job, you might have to actually, do it yourself, just like Brent did. Just start working. If it's private practice, or just do your own thing, and you will get experience. I think 90% or 95% of the work that I do is all stuff that I've learned on the job. It had nothing to do with what I learned in law school. So you're going to have to, get a whole new skill set, a whole new basic set of knowledge in order to do what you're going to do in the future. And you can't really rely on what you learned in law school, other than you're going to get your ticket, your law degree, and that in itself is very valuable. So
we'll wrap up. Ellen, you've worn these different hats I was talking about. You have a similar hat collection to me.
Oh, I think
I don't know. I mean, just
Melissa was in here trying to wrap it up for you.
okay. Well, I'd be curious. I'll indulge you a little bit. Just having worked sort of some of the same three hats that I'm talking about working for a firm, working for sort of the government, and now representing nonprofits. Whether you have any thoughts.
The key, as everybody says, is getting experience. And so, people are, whether you get it at the clinic, whether you get it in an externship, it gives you a leg up when you're trying to get a job. Our own research assistant, Shanna, just got a job with the PUC, doing some of the work that we're doing in the clinic. And I'm sure it was because the clinic is in the PUC and known for its work. So, at least that's what she says.
Okay, well with that, I'd like to thank our panelists, and once again, very interesting exchanges. Hope it gave you guys sort of a full perspective on some of the opportunities and types of practice that you can do. And once again, I have some flyers related to the November 11th conference that we're having here on offshore energy. So I'm going to put them out front here, and I think you guys are going to hang out for a couple minutes for folks who just want to come down and chat informally. So thank you.